Hi, and welcome to Creepy Crime Story, where the darkest truths aren't imagined, they're real. Beijing, Chaoyang District. Dawn breaks on September 11th, 2025, and the courtyard below a glass and steel tower turns into a measured scene. Cones set, tape lifted, radios low. A single line moves through the air like frost. Alan Yu, 37, actor and singer, dead after a fall inside the complex. 12 hours earlier, he'd been in the same building for a private dinner. By sunrise, a perimeter is drawn and the official language tightens to a careful thread. No criminal suspicion, alcohol noted, the family asking the public to avoid speculation. It is brief, respectful, and it leaves behind a long stretch of darkness between 2 o'clock and 6. That stretch is the morning window, the 4 silent hours when the story leaves public view. Around 2 in the morning, accounts place Alan stepping away from a shared room into a bedroom and locking the door from the inside. Near 6, responders arrive to a fall scene within the grounds. Everything that isn't pinned by those 2 sentences becomes the canvas for grief, anger, and curiosity. Fans who knew him as disciplined and kind, millions of them, look at a life that read as steady and ask how steadiness can end on a courtyard floor. When answers don't come fast, the internet writes its own. By mid-morning, version 2 of the night is already spreading. It doesn't announce itself as truth. It arrives as fragments. A photograph of a tabletop crowded with bottles. A checkout slip someone says matches a bar run. A hallway still with a timestamp. Then another, and another, each framed as the moment just before the night turned. A caption points out a hand on a shoulder, a stagger by the elevator, a hurried step in the small hours. Short audio files surface, raised voices behind a door, a phrase that sounds like a warning or a plea. There are claims of 3 calls in the deep night from a masked number to someone close, punctuated by the chilling "almost done." And somewhere in the layers, a suggestion that a window screen wasn't quite right or that something on the mesh tells a different story. None of it arrives with a verified chain of custody. All of it moves with the speed of a beloved name. This is how a new timeline forms without ever being written down. Viewers with good intentions place a still beside a clip beside a rumor and call it a sequence. The mind completes the cut. A larger-than-reported party, heavier drinking than anyone will admit, a corridor where guiding hands become control, an elevator where a quick exit looks like flight. Maybe, maybe not. In a city that records everything in slices, lobbies, cabs, corners of halls, silence between those slices breeds a narrative of its own. Inside the official lane, the words remain compact. No criminal suspicion. Alcohol involved. The family's plea for restraint. Compact isn't cruel. It's meant to protect the living. But compact also has a cost, and it is paid in doubt. People do not merely want a cause. They want a chronology. They want to know whether anyone approached a locked door between 2 and 6, who held the authority to open it at dawn, what the building saw from lobby to elevator to corridor, and whether a toxicology number explains impairment or merely accompanies tragedy. Those aren't accusations. They are the ordinary questions that appear whenever a sudden death happens in a controlled environment. The morning window sits at the center of all of it. 4 hours where the camera might have seen or might have missed, where a phone might have stayed still on a table or traveled from room to room, where neighbors might have heard quiet or agitation or nothing at all. If the unit's corridor is clean and flat through the night, that points the lens inward toward a room and the physics of a fall. If the strip is not flat, if dots appear on the timeline near the door, if an elevator rides when none should, then the silence isn't empty. It's crowded. Right now, the public doesn't have that strip, only edits of edits presented as windows into the truth. There's another weight that presses on the story. Scale. Alan Yu's audience is measured in tens of millions. The larger the audience, the more the blank space feels like an insult. A career that wasn't in retreat, a reputation that wasn't frayed, a mother asking strangers not to turn her son into content, that combination makes restraint feel, to many, like evasion. It doesn't have to be. A single page could anchor the night without invading anyone's dignity. A floor-wide timeline from evening to dawn, names redacted. A single line indicating how and when a locked room changed state. A brief toxicology abstract stating whether the alcohol level is consistent with impaired judgment. Precision isn't cold here, it's kind. It stops people from writing parts for those who were there and never agreed to be characters. Until that page exists, we're left with two narratives running side by side, the compact official spine and the crowdsourced cut built from fragments. In one, the morning window is an empty lane that leads to an accident with alcohol present. In the other, the morning window is a corridor full of small movements that add up to a story no one wants to say out loud. Both are incomplete. Both can't be whole without the same thing: time pinned to images, images pinned to place. This series will not pretend rumor is evidence, and it will not pretend evidence is unnecessary. We will hold the confirmed points where they belong and lay the circulating claims next to the questions that could actually resolve them. We will ask what the building saw and what it didn't, what a phone's quiet can prove and what it can't, why a door that was locked became a door that opened and at what minute it happened. The morning window isn't a void, it's a test. If the record moves from clips to chronology, this case moves with it. If it doesn't, the internet will go on cutting a film out of shadows, and shadows, no matter how many times you repost them, never develop into proof. Before a case can move, it needs a ruler. Victimology is that ruler, the careful sketch of who a person was the day before everything broke. With Alan Yu, the lines look straight. At 37, he was a working actor-singer with a reputation for showing up prepared, speaking sparingly, and keeping his circle small. His public schedules from late summer 2025 read like a craftsman's calendar. Studio blocks, fittings, a branded appearance penciled for later in the month. Nothing in those squares signaled a spiral. On the night of September 10, 2025, he attends a private dinner in a Chaoyang high-rise. By dawn, September 11th, he is gone. Baseline is not biography. It's a comparator. What does ordinary look like for this person? Arrivals and departures, alcohol tolerance, digital habits, security routines. Friends describe a low-drama rhythm, private transport when possible, quick goodbyes, home by default. Colleagues stress discipline, not asceticism. He could drink, but the image of binge excess didn't fit the man they worked with. Those statements don't decide what happened between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock a.m. They tell you what would count as deviation if the night veered. Access is part of the ruler. Modern towers choreograph movement with entry points, elevator calls, and cameras at choke points. Under normal conditions, a guest list is short, a route is predictable, and the corridor outside a host unit stays quiet. In that frame, a locked bedroom at roughly 2 a.m. becomes a pivot. Who held keys? What authority governs opening a door at dawn? And which procedures a building follows when a welfare check is requested? None of those questions accuse anyone. They map what ordinary should have looked like if the morning had stayed calm. Digital life fills the ruler's finer marks. A phone left on a table versus carried into a room looks identical in a rumor thread. On a router log, it reads differently. Signal strength, access point hops, a smartwatch that stops reporting movement or keeps pulsing from the same corner of the apartment. These are quiet details that decide whether the story inside the walls is motionless or not. Baseline says what to expect from a normal night. Metadata says whether the night stayed normal. Scale, again, changes pressure. Allen's following sits in the tens of millions. Grief at that size doesn't whisper. It demands receipts. In the 11 days since the fall, today is September 22, 2025, questions have hardened into refrains. Show the floor-wide camera strip from evening to dawn. State plainly how and when a locked room was accessed. Publish a brief toxicology abstract that explains whether alcohol reached levels associated with impaired judgment. These are not prurient asks. They are the minimum anchors that keep a sudden death from turning into a choose-your-own edit. Not everyone waits for anchors. Under the upload storm, one viewer's comment captured the mood that fuels version 2 of the night. As people say, if someone dies, you should see the body. If someone lives, you should see the person. For something this big, neither the neighborhood, the funeral home, nor the hospital has released a single image or video. I'm not talking about photos of the body. In cases like this, there are usually at least a few candid shots of the funeral taken by passers-by. How is that possible? We don't even know where the remains are, and the victim's mother hasn't spoken. It's strange that all we see online is a string of rumors. It almost feels like he's been hidden away and a fake death staged. It's raw, and it speaks for many who equate silence with concealment. But a clarification belongs beside it. A few days after the incident, Alan's mother and family issued a short public request not to speculate, a choice consistent with protecting dignity, not necessarily with hiding facts. Online, some fans argue the family must be under pressure. Offline, the biography adds a harder truth. His mother is a 72-year-old single parent, and Alan was her only child. Grief at that age, at that scale, rarely looks like a press tour. Baseline doesn't just measure a victim. It reminds us that families are not institutions. They do not owe the internet a cadence. The baseline also explains why specific rumors bite. If a man known for preparation is painted as unable to stand, the claim collides with image and demands numbers. If a night labeled small is recut as a moving crowd, head count matters. If a door said to be locked becomes a door that opened, authorization and time are the only details that tie dignity to certainty. In every direction, the path from rumor to relief runs through the same three nouns: chronology, authorization, concentration. We have the way investigators begin a file, with a ruler laid flat, not a theory held high. Alan Yu's ordinary was quiet, scheduled, disciplined. The question for the hours between 2 o'clock and 6 a.m. is not whether the internet can assemble a collage that contradicts that. It's whether the building, the devices, and a short forensic note can show, concisely, respectfully, if the night deviated, when it deviated, and by how much. The morning window will not answer itself. The baseline tells us exactly what to ask. 3 fixed pins frame the night. A private gathering on September 10th, around 2 o'clock a.m. Alan steps into a bedroom reportedly locked from inside. Just before 6 o'clock a.m., responders find a fall victim in the complex. The case is whatever connects those pins. In a modern tower, movement leaves receipts. A single floor-wide camera strip, lobby, elevator, corridor, from evening to dawn would show whether anyone approached the unit between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock. If the corridor is flat, no motion in view, the focus tightens to a closed room and the physics of a fall. If dots appear near the door, the story changes from empty window to contact. 2 answers close most arguments: when and by whom the bedroom was opened at dawn, timestamp plus authorization. A brief toxicology back figure indicating impairment versus accompaniment. Devices can confirm what cameras miss. A phone or watch that stays static reads one way on network logs. One that moves reads another. We don't need private content, only a binary, still or moving. Viral frames and audio clips remain noise until anchored to this floor and this clock. Publish sequence, door access, and BAC. And the file either stands as an alcohol-involved accident or advances with specific times and actors. 11 days on, that's the shortest path from rumor to record. When official language stays sparse, the internet edits. By mid-morning on September 11th, a stitched version 2 of the night had taken shape. Bottle-heavy tabletop photos framed as proof of a larger party. Hallway and elevator stills stamped 2127, 0150. 0230 passed around as if sequence equals truth. Short audios claimed to capture raised voices outside a door. Whispers of 3 late-night calls from a masked number. Close-ups of a window screen / mesh said to show something off. None arrives with chain of custody. All travel faster than corrections. This is how fragments become a timeline. An image suggests head count, a still implies control, an exit looks like flight, and a caption turns doubt into dialogue. But without a continuous strip tied to this floor and this clock, frames mean less than the story people project onto them. A hand on a shoulder can read as kindness or coercion. A hurried step can be panic or simply the last train. The clip can't tell you which, only sequence can. There's also platform gravity. Once a fragment trends, it anchors interpretations downstream. Within hours, reposts accrue context they never had, confirmed, from that night. Same elevator. Each retelling hardens pixels into facts. Meanwhile, the unglamorous tools that would settle things, corridor movement lines, the exact minute a locked door changed state, a small BAC number, remain unseen, and so the crowd keeps writing. The responsible posture isn't to mock rumor, it's to convert it into testable prompts. If the party was large, head count will show in lobby elevator flow. If someone steadied Alan at 0150, the same person should appear again as the night turns. If the mesh was altered, a technical note should say, how. If calls were placed, records can mark duration and origin. Until those prompts meet documents, version 2 stays a collage, compelling, shareable, and fundamentally unverified. So the edit war continues, compact official lines versus a viral cut of fragments. One page could end it. Barring that, the safest thing we can do is keep rumor in the questions column, not the answers column, and refuse to cast strangers in roles the evidence hasn't assigned. Silence didn't arrive empty. It arrived with two versions of care. Inside the apartment on September 10th, people describe an ordinary night that grew late, a guest stepping into a bedroom, and a morning that ended in tragedy. Police echo the modest framing, no criminal suspicion, alcohol noted, and move on. Beyond those walls, millions of strangers mourn a man they knew as steady and kind and ask for more than a sentence. Between those lanes, compact official language and a public unready to let go, tension hums. Families are not institutions, and grief does not keep office hours. A few days after the fall, Alan's mother, 72, a single parent who raised one son, released a brief appeal to stop speculating. It sounded like dignity. Online, it was heard by some as pressure. That is the hazard of scale. The same sentence can read as love or leverage depending on who is listening and how little else is known. When the biography of the bereaved meets the machinery of rumor, even kindness gets cross-examined. The industry around him stayed measured. Colleagues posted tributes without theory, partners expressed condolences and avoided the churn. Platform teams, wary of edits masquerading as evidence, took down spliced clips and sanctioned accounts that fabricated scenes. For supporters already suspicious, moderation looked like censorship. For those closest to the family, it was a shield. The contradiction isn't personal, it's structural. Control arrived before clarity. That sequence matters. When information is scarce, fragments become furniture. A bottle photo stands in for head count, a still for sequence, a caption for context. The official lane, careful by design, leaves those stand-ins where certainty should be. The public response isn't a demand for spectacle. It's a request to be treated like adults. Show the motion that exists, state who had the right to act, and give one number that explains whether impairment plausibly changed the night. There is a way to meet in the middle without turning private lives into exhibits. A building can speak in patterns, not faces. A lock can be accounted for by time and role, not by rumor about who stood behind it. A lab can summarize influence without inviting prurience. None of that names a villain. All of it steadies a conclusion. If the night was ordinary right up until it wasn't, sequence and procedure will say so. If it wasn't, the same record will narrow the questions to minutes and people instead of moods and edits. The lanes don't have to collide. The compact version honors dignity. The crowd's version asks for certainty. Both are trying to protect someone. One protects the living from being dragged through speculation. The other protects the lost from being reduced to a shrug. The bridge between those aims is dull on purpose. A short chronology, a line about a door, and a measured note from a lab. When that bridge is standing, grief can cross without picking a fight with doubt. Until then, the story remains split, a careful sentence and a restless chorus. We will keep them side by side, not to sharpen blame, but to show where they could meet if the record were allowed to grow by a single page. Think of the building like a school hallway test. You don't need everyone's diary. You just need to see who walked past the classroom and when. One simple page can do it. Imagine a horizontal strip from evening to dawn. Every time a person passes the lobby camera, a small dot appears. When an elevator door opens, the dot jumps up to a floor. If a corridor camera sees footsteps near the host apartment, the dot slides along that line. If nothing moves, the line stays empty. That's it. Dots on a line. No faces, no gossip, just motion and minutes. People kept asking, wait, what if the last few feet in front of the door weren't on camera? Good question. If there's a blind corner, just shade that box and say so. No activity in view from 2, 6 on, last 10 feet are a blind. Clear, honest, and it stops arguments that an empty frame means an empty floor. Now the door itself. We don't need a reenactment, we need a receipt. One line does the job. At time or roll, unlock the bedroom for welfare check per building protocol. That's not drama. It's a timestamp plus authority. It turns someone must have into here's who did and when. Devices can backstop the picture. You don't have to publish chats or photos. Just tell us whether a phone or watch stayed put or moved during the window. Think of it like a present-absent roll call. Still equals one story, moving equals another, short, binary, respectful. Finally, numbers, quiet noise. A brief toxicology figure, no flourishes, just the level, tells us whether poor judgment was likely in play or merely present in the background. For most viewers, that single number does more than 100 opinion threads. Put these pieces together and you give the night boundaries. If the strip is flat, the door line is routine, and the number fits, the file settles. If the strip shows late movement, the door line is odd, or the number clashes with the scene, the questions narrow to minutes and people, not to rumors and edits. Either way, the story gets easier to follow, and kinder to everyone involved. The week that followed wasn't eventful, it was decisive. Platforms clipped obvious fakes, rumor hubs rewrapped the same fragments, and fans sorted themselves into two camps. Those waiting for documents, and those convinced documents would never come. Colleagues kept tributes short. Work partners stayed off camera. No one close tried to narrate the night. One message from the family, simple, asking for restraint, became a Rorschach. Some took it at face value. Others read pressure between the lines. That debate isn't evidence. It's a symptom of an empty docket. When the record is thin, people project. What actually matters now fits on a single practical list. A floor-wide motion strip tied to the clock, a time-stamped line about the locked door, and a modest toxicology number. If they align with the official conclusion, the noise drops. If they don't, the questions sharpen to minutes and rolls instead of moods and edits. Either way, clarity replaces theory. Until then, the task is simple and unglamorous. Keep rumor in the questions column, keep confirmed facts in the answers column, and refuse to cast anyone until the page arrives. There is no final word yet. As of today, the only official line is that Alan Yu fell. The rest remains under investigation. No full report, no corridor sequence, no brief toxicology abstract. A narrow sentence and a very large silence. The silence hasn't stayed empty. Fans and casual viewers alike are still mourning and still skeptical. When platforms removed clips and images as misleading, the intent was to protect the family. For many, it read like erasure. In that vacuum, suspicion multiplied, not just about one night in Chaoyang, but about an industry that has seen too many sudden endings and too many whispers of unwritten rules. CBiz isn't a courtroom, but it shapes reputations like one. Money and influence often set the tempo, and ordinary people are left to read between the beats. That's why calls are growing, not for spectacle, but for work shown. A Florida Dawn motion strip with faces redacted, a single time-stamped line about the locked door, and a modest toxicology number. Publish those, and whatever the conclusion is, it will stand sturdier. Until then, there are two duties that can coexist. The first is to push for a thorough, transparent inquiry, to ask plainly for documents, not dramas, and to hold institutions to the standard a sudden public death deserves. The second is to respect the law and each other. Don't dox, don't name strangers as villains, don't circulate unverified claims that turn grief into targets. Rumor feels like momentum. In reality, it scatters the truth we say we want. This channel will keep the lanes separate. What's confirmed, what's circulating, and what would actually answer the open questions. If and when the record grows by even a single page, we'll measure it against the night, not against anyone's favorite theory. For Alan's fans, millions who saw steadiness and kindness and wanted more years of both, the hurt won't vanish with paperwork. But paper matters. It tells the living how to carry the dead without inventing a story to carry them in. So we end here, not with a verdict, but with a pledge. Keep the pressure where it belongs, keep the speculation where it can't do harm, and wait for the answers that time and process still owe.